Welcome to Cinemaphile, where we showcase the best in independent documentary and foreign filmmakers and talk to them about their work. I'm your host, Mike Kaspar. You can listen to other interviews by going to Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar at Spotify. From Oscar-nominated filmmaker Amy Berg comes the film It's Never Over, Jeff Buckley. It covers the life of the rising star with an otherworldly voice, boundary-pushing artistry who left the 90s music world reeling when he died suddenly at the age of 30 after the release of his critically acclaimed debut album, Grace. We're going to get into our conversation now with Amy Berg. There is a lot to cover here. He was a remarkable musician, had a pretty eventful life. And with that, Amy Berg, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Mike. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you. I was familiar with Jeff Buckley, as I mentioned before went on the air. I listened to his music. I didn't know a lot about, I knew about his father a little bit before my time, who was a successful singer-songwriter in his own right. That's Tim Buckley. What put you onto the project? Were you a fan of Jeff Buckley before you started this project?
Yeah, like you, I got the CD in the 90s and I was really into other types of music at the time. And I just heard Grace and it just grounded me. It was like something I hadn't heard before. And it gave me permission to feel and cry and all those things that the other music that was popular at that moment in history did not offer. So it was a pleasant surprise. I loved the album, and then he was taken away way too soon, and his death really upset me. There was a narrative that Jeff had overdosed, which I knew wasn't true over the decades when I talked about him. But also I found this beautiful, tragic human who had some really difficult family situations to navigate. And I really wanted to tell this story because I thought it was really important.
A lot of people will know him from his cover of the Leonard Cohen song Hallelujah, which is stunningly beautiful. It is one of those songs that you hear it once and you can't, it's otherworldly in the way he sings it, and it really resonates with, I think, so many. Well, I think it's the song that kind of defined him. I'm glad you did what you did in regards to his legacy, because it fleshes out so much more about him. But for people who've only heard Hallelujah, how would you characterize, well, you mentioned it, it's very grounding kind of music. What would
Mhm.
you describe his vocal style as?
He drew his influences ranged from like Barbara Streisand to Judy Garland to Nina Simone to Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, a very diverse group of vocalists. Not to forget about Led Zeppelin being his favorite band. And he just had this way of Carl Berger said in the film, Carl Berger being the composer who passed away last year but worked on Grace. He said his most people lose power as they go higher, but Jeff gets stronger as he goes higher. And he thought we hadn't even heard the actual potential of Jeff's voice yet.
I happen to have been a fan of Nusrat as well. So when I see these influences in the film that he drew upon, it really does give you the sense that he had a very well-rounded view of music and of art. And that again is pulled me into the story even more. But I do want to talk about his father, Tim Buckley, and the impact that he had as a musician in the world while he was here with us, but also the impact he had on Jeff's life.
Well, Tim was a kind of folk singer of the 60s and 70s, and he had a cult following, mostly in New York and Greenwich Village. But he was Mary, Jeff's mom, met Tim in high school, and they got married, and she got pregnant, and he took off like right away. So Jeff never knew his dad. He met him one time when he was 8 years old, and that was only a few months before his dad passed away. So when Jeff was blessed with this talent and this musical genius and started following his career path, he was constantly introduced, on radio shows and live shows and to music executives as Tim Buckley's son. And it was very difficult for him because he didn't feel like Tim Buckley's son. He didn't know his father at all. He didn't get any of the benefits. Yeah.
It felt like watching him in the film and seeing these interviews where he's talking about his art, he's talking about what he hopes to get out of his quote unquote career. He seemed very self-aware and I don't know if I would call it a reaction to his father, but he was weary of the star-making machine that he felt it seems that he felt he was being pulled into.
Right. Yeah, he just kind of magically found his way, just embraced by the scene after playing at this tribute concert, which was put on by Hal Wilner and some other notable music folks. But it was kind of an impossible force to stop.
I want to talk about his music because, as you were describing his influences, it seemed like he was determined to be able to keep the door open on anything and anywhere he wanted to go with his music. Is that a fair way to put it?
Yeah, I mean, he just wanted to explore, and he had this idea that having creative control with his major label deal was going to offer him, the ability to kind of travel where he wanted to with his music. And I think that was the plan. I think that Columbia got behind him in that way.
I
I
love
think
that.
it's also interesting, Mike, just to like jump in ahead of you here since it's recorded, is that he's from your
Yeah,
listeners might even be in Anaheim. He's from Anaheim, California. His mother went to Laura High School in
Laura
Anaheim.
High School. Yeah, I'm
Hmm.
not familiar with it, but at that period of time, we're talking what the 70s probably when he
Yeah,
was in high school.
yeah.
Um, yeah, one of the things about Orange County that I don't think people truly appreciate is how young, how new Orange County is. It really didn't
Hmm.
come into its own until probably about that period of time when the 405 freeway didn't go all the way through Orange County. It was after that period of time when that was built. So
Right.
it was an area that was mostly agricultural, mostly rural in some ways.
Right.
So yeah, it was quite a time to be growing up in Orange County. I've been here for a little while, and it was very I won't say open, but all the amenities were so new and available for almost anyone who lived in Orange
Right.
County. So
Right.
so yeah, he grew up. Yeah, yeah. I can imagine the influences of being here. It's obviously
Yeah.
yeah.
And when he did ultimately meet his father, it was at the Golden Bear, which is in San Juan Capistrano, not too far away. But that was, his mom saw that in the paper and they went and saw his dad play at the Golden
It,
Bear. And I remember that as a venue, in the 80s very well. It was a
is
kind
that
of,
where they met? I used to live right around the corner from the Golden Bear. Wow, that's I didn't
yeah,
know that. I didn't.
yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah, well, he had, again, we were talking about earlier, he had an amazing voice. And what I was struck by watching the film, by the way, we're talking about the film It's Never Over, Jeff Buckley, and we're speaking with the director, Amy Berg. What I was struck by was how his voice almost sounds like Prince. It's in that range. He has a very high, yeah, as you said, the power of his voice got stronger as he went up in the scales, but he could approach a song and bring to bear a lot of different vocal intonations. A real gift
Yeah.
that I felt like he had.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a great comparison. I haven't heard that before, but what an interesting comparison.
Yeah, I'm not, I'm not sure it's exactly accurate, but it reminds me of when there's a lot of artists who can go up and down
Hmm.
the vocal range,
Right.
but he seemed prone to, yeah, to be able to really deliver. a song with a lot of
Yeah.
emotion. I guess that would be a better way to put it.
Yeah. And it's like his pain was promoting the elevation of his voice, and
Yeah.
it was so deep and raw and real.
The people that you bring into the conversation in this film are, again, his mother is, we get a chance to meet her. The women that he loved are in this film. There's a lot of different voices brought to bear, the people he played with. In terms of gathering the people together for the film, what was the thing that you were, trying to obviously put together a well-rounded portrait of him, but what struck you about the people that he grew up with and he worked with and he loved?
Yeah, I mean, the story was framed by the archive that exists for sure to begin with, and then there were certain stories and some anecdotes that people like Amy Mann and Ben Harper shared with us that I found so interesting that I wanted to like include them in the story. But the idea was always to tell Jeff's story through the women he loved, and I think that's a specific vantage point for this story. Jeff was such a feminist, and I was starting to look through the archive in 2019 when the Women's March was everywhere, and there was a language, a cultural language that Jeff was already speaking in the 90s. And so I felt like that was where I was supposed to go with it, and I just went with it.
Well, you did a great job, and I'm looking forward to the people who will be introduced to Jeff Buckley, looking forward for this film to make that kind of an impact on them. The film is being released through Magnolia. I think it's also a co-production of HBO documentary films. It should be getting a wide distribution, I'm sure, because of Magnolia and the other entities involved. And we were talking before we got started about this compilation of music that was supposed to be a part of a second release. And you see in that you can see again the talent, the breadth of the talent involved with him and his songwriting. Is there something in particular about his, I'll call it legacy, but it's something about that for people listening to our conversation who don't know Jeff Buckley,
Mhm.
that you want to take away from his time here with us as an artist?
Well, I say ask your teenage kids because they seem to all know about it today. It's a legacy that gets bigger and bigger as time goes on, and with the popularity of TikTok, Jeff Buckley is bigger now than he ever could have imagined back when he was still with us. So the legacy just keeps growing. Since we announced the film at Sundance, Grace has charted for the first time in 30 years on the Billboard Top 200, and his songs keep, hitting the top five on TikTok. And so I think the legacy continues. And this is a great way to understand Jeff and his music from kind of more the vantage point where you and I found it in the 90s.
Yeah.
So I think like this film was intended to be the experience of listening to the album the first time, but even more intimate. And I just hope that people will go and see it in the theater and, and get immersed in Jeff for an hour and a half.
You previously had done a documentary about Janis Joplin. Was her and her life ended far
Hmm.
too soon, far too young. Any anything is in terms of a connection? Did you see or feel
Hmm.
anything of a similarity in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, they were two groundbreaking artists. I mean, if I had to guess, I would imagine Jeff really loved Janis Joplin. And she did something with her voice where maybe it was even more masculine than feminine at the time. And many say that Jeff's voice is like gender defying as well. So I think there were a lot of similarities. And in the storytelling style, they're both very intimate stories where you feel like you know the artist at the end of the film. So that was kind of my North Star in terms of, how to create an interesting narrative where the music and the story of their life coincides.
By the way, that documentary film was called Janis, Little Girl Blue. Among your other work, mentioned Deliver Us from Evil, which is when we met many years ago
Hmm.
now,
Hmm.
west of Memphis, Every Secret Thing. It was such a wide range in terms of your filmmaking, the subjects that you've taken on. So it's always an honor and a thrill to be able to talk to you about your work. I want to thank our guest today, Amy Berg, for her work here with this wonderful documentary film called It's Never Over, Jeff Buckley, and for all of her work. So thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Mike.
You have been listening to Cinemaphile. I'm your host, Mike Kaspar, and you can listen to previous interviews as well as special programming, or you can subscribe by going to Cinemaphile, that's F-I-L-E, with Mike Kaspar, at Spotify. Until next time, thank you for listening.